Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 2 of the Rigging for Beginners series volume 1. So in today's lesson I will go more about the orientations of bones and how to edit the orientations, some tips on aligning them together, and also we're going to get to use constraints. So we'll be starting to use a constraint called the IK constraint. So before I get into explaining, like bone alignments, orientations, and of course constraints, I'd like to mention that when we start rigging characters, and for this case the legs, or any limb for that matter, by default, if we go to pose mode and we try to animate this, for example, notice that when we move the parts of the limbs, they rotate like one at a time. So what will happen is, if we create an IK constraint, is that we'll have one bone that will drive the motion of the rest of the bones. So the IK constraint, or inverse kinematics, it will have the kinematics going from inverse order, versus forward kinematics will rely on the main, like it's like a chain reaction. Like you have to go 1, then here 2, and then 3. But with inverse kinematics, it takes 1 and it will move the rest. So let's talk about alignment. Let's talk about bone alignments. So let's go to edit mode, just like that. We're now in edit mode, and I wanted to mention the extra stuff here in the object data properties for the armature. So in the first lesson, we talked about like the names, the shapes, and the bone colors in front, but we didn't cover about the axes. So we have the axes here at the tail or the head of the bone, right? The axes are very important because it will help us look at the orientation. Now, the orientation plays a big role because if we go to pose mode, and let's say if we rotate on the x-axis locally by pressing X twice to go to local, X once, if you press R and X once, that's the global, and if you press X again, it'll be the local. So we have like multiple of these orientations. Now, let's, for this case, mess this up. Let's duplicate this bone, right? And mess it up in a way that we have it like this, right? And I will do something quick like this. So I press Control R to rotate it or roll the bone. And this is very important for when you align bones and when you want to fix bones, is that if you press Control R, you can play with the roll of the bone, and if you press F9, you can have the context menu here and you can play with it as well. Now, of course, if you want to reset the rolling of that, you press Alt R and it will reset it as it is. Now, for the orientations, we can play with this, and I think it was Shift N. Yes. So if you press Shift N, it'll open us a menu called Recalculate Roll. So we have the positive, negative, x-axis. This allows us to play with the orientations. This is very important for whenever you are going to rig characters for games. Some game engines will have the rotation system or the orientations. They will have the coordinate system to be Y up. So Y up. But in Blender's case, it's Z up. And that's how Blender is. This is the same case. Z up is also the same case for programs like 3ds Max. And in Maya, you can adjust the coordinates. You can adjust the vertical axis to be either Y or Z. There's an option for that inside of Maya. But for Blender, it's by default, it's Z up. You cannot do anything. So keep in mind of your game engine and what their coordinate systems might be. Is it Z up or is it Y up? This is very important because if you don't align the rotations or change the orientations to match with that, it'll be problematic. Now let's talk about the rolls. Rolling allows us to adjust this. So I will click on this one real quick and press Control R, and notice how it's messed up. So Alt R will fix it again to its original spot. And you can play with the clear roll here. You can adjust the values. Or if you don't want to do it that way, you can go press N. And if we scroll up here, go to the item, we can see that there's an option called roll. There's other options as well, so we can adjust the positioning of the tail and the head of the bone, but for the time being, we don't really need to do much. There are other handy stuff, such as the length, so if you want to increase the length along the axis, you can do that. But if you don't want to, it's best to keep it as it is. Rolling allows us to play with the values as we like. It will fix it up, it'll set it up to be normal. Now, let's talk about aligning bones. So we have this stray bone here, and I want it to be aligned just like this bone. So I click on this one, and then I shift click on the upper leg bone, and if I press Control Alt A, it'll be aligned with it. It'll follow the rotations. Now here's another handy tip that you might like. If we go to the snapping tool here, or snapping mode, and click on it, it looks like a horseshoe magnet. So if we click on the snapping options, we can choose snap to vertex, and this will snap precisely where we want. So I want to move this up like this, and if I hover my mouse over the bone here, it'll snap to it. And if I go y-axis and do the same thing, it'll be perfectly aligned. And if I want to go with the x-axis, you can also do the same thing. I'm going to do the same here. So we're going to press G and Z, hover the mouse over here, and we have perfectly aligned it. And if we go to the right orthographic view by pressing numpad 3, we have that here. So this is how you align bones, and this works perfectly if you have like multiple chains, and I want all of these to align with this, right? So select all of these and Control Alt A, and all of them will align perfectly. This is extremely handy for whenever you want to do this. Now, another amazing tip that can help you is if you're rigging something and you want the bone to also, let's say like you want to segment the bone, right? If you right click and click on Subdivide, it will do that. And we have also the option here in the context menu, and we can add more cuts. This is really handy for advanced rigging later on in your journey. So let's say you have an arm and you want to add twist bones. This is a quick way of adding twist bones. Twist bones will help us make the deformation on the hands much more natural, and we'll cover that later on into the series. Maybe another playlist perhaps, but we'll cover more about it in depth, and I'll tell you all about it, how to set it up and how to work on that. But for the time being, what's important to know is the alignment and also the orientation. So the axis here in the viewport display, specifically in the object data properties of the armature, is extremely handy. And of course you can adjust the positioning of it so you can see it for better visibility. You can have the relations to be either the tail or the head of the bone. So you could do whatever you like. You can adjust the positioning here, and this will help a lot with sometimes visual clarity. Now, once we're done with the orientations, and of course we're done with aligning the bones, let's talk about creating an IK constraint. So to do that, we're going to select the foot here, duplicate it by pressing Shift D, scale it up a little bit, but notice that the scaling here is going off, and we don't want that. Like it's scaling from the middle. So we can go here to our transfer pivots, and we can click on active element, and if we click on S to scale, it'll scale it like this. So let's do that. And I'm gonna call this foot IK underscore left. And now we have the foot IK here. We're going to separate it, clear parent. And we're gonna have it parented to the root. That way, when we move the character around the IK bone, the foot IK controller will be following along. Now, in the first lesson, I talked about the importance of, oh, okay, hold on. Before I go into that, let's match up the alignments here, just like that. Perfect. We have fixed the alignments. Of course, I could just take this again and symmetrize it like we did in the first lesson, where we click on armature and symmetrize and we'll adjust it perfectly. So, as I was saying, the reason why we had bends in our leg is because when we use an IK constraint, we want to make sure that the IK constraint, let's just change the color here so we can demonstrate it better. So the importance of this is that the IK constraints, or inverse kinematics constraints, will require a triangle formation. It's like a little triangular formation where the triangle here, let me just clean this up a little bit here. This triangle formation will have a point in here, and this point is where we'll place our pole vector. The pole vector will be driving the rotation of the knee, and it will make it a lot more, it'll make it feel a lot more natural. And I'll explain to you more about the pole vector and why it's so important. So we have this part here, we're gonna select it, and we're gonna press Shift S and to select it. So we're gonna have a cursor here to select it, and if we press Shift A, it'll create a bone. And let's just move the bone a little bit back here. And I'm gonna call this pole, I'm gonna call it leg, pole, left. So this is also gonna be parented, we can have it parented here temporarily. We can also make it so that it follows the foot here. So for the time being, we're gonna just keep it as that. All right, so to create the constraints, we have to go to pose mode. So I'm gonna click on pose mode. Again, Control Tab, or if you want to, go here to pose mode, and let's select the lower leg. So we're gonna go to the section called bone constraints. I already have gone here, and you'll see a button here called Add Bone Constraint. In here, we're going to click on the inverse kinematics. Now notice there are so many constraints here. We're not going to cover all of the constraints in here. We're mainly focusing in this lesson on the inverse kinematics because we want to create a leg rig here. And in the next lesson, we'll have a practical example of how to use this on an actual model. And you will follow along with me, and we're going to do this together. We're going to rig some legs. So if we click on the inverse kinematics here, we have multiple options here. So we have the target. So the target being our armature and the bone. So the bone here will be the IK bone that we created, the foot IK left. So foot IK left, we'll target this, and for the chain length pretty much tells you, okay, how many bones are in this chain. So for our case, it's 2 bones. It's this one and this one. And it's the lower leg and upper leg. So we have 2 bones in the chain. If you have 3, we put 3. If we have 4, we have 4, and so on. So now if we use the foot IK, notice that the leg is moving along. But you're wondering, hey, why is the foot not going here with us? Well, for the foot's case, we can click on it, and if we press Shift Z for X-ray wireframe mode, we'll click on Add Bone Constraint, and we're gonna do a copy rotation. Oh, oops, not limit rotation, copy rotation. So we're gonna click again, the armature being our target, and the bone that we will want to copy the rotations from is the foot IK left. So now if I rotate the leg and if I move along, oops, let me disable the snapping. So by the way, if you want to disable the snapping, the shortcut for it is Shift Tab as shown there. Or if you can click on it here to toggle it on and off. So I'm going to erase this illustration real quick and go here. And if I move this, notice that the leg is moving, and if we rotate, the foot is also following along. And we have pretty much made an IK control, but notice that if we move around, oops, notice that if we move around here and we do stuff like this, the leg is not following properly. And if we want to rotate and stuff, we want to control this, we cannot. So we have no control over the rotation of the knee. how do we control that? So how do you get to that? Well, the leg pole here that we created is going to be the solution for us. So I'm going to click on the lower leg left and click on the pole target. Again, our target is armature, and then we type here pole, and it'll be the left pole. Now sometimes, depending on the orientations here, it can mess up for some bizarre reason, and it's either playing with the settings here or looking at the angle. So the pole angle, let's give it a 90 here, or a negative 90, to see where it faces. So it's facing us directly. So now, if we look at this, we can also adjust it. Sometimes Blender is not really liking the 90 value, so we have to adjust it to our own accord. And I'm going to play with the values here like this. So at negative 96.4. Yours might be different depending on the angle and stuff. So now if we raise the foot, notice that it follows along with the pole target. And if we use the pole bone and we move it around, the knee will rotate with it. So we temporarily had the pole target here being parented to the root. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it in edit mode and click on the foot IK and parent it. So Control P, keep offset. And now if we go to pose mode and do this, it'll rotate with it. So this is a simple IK constraint leg system that we did, and the best part about this is that we can go to edit mode and select the left side of this entirely, and if we go to armature, symmetrize, it creates everything for us. And now if we go to pose mode and also move this, notice that the constraints and everything are also copied over. All the settings that we did. So we don't have to do much at all. It's simple. And that's why I said in our previous lesson, or on lesson 1, that naming your bones properly, so if you give it underscore left, underscore L, or dot left, or dot L, will allow us to have proper symmetry. And it's very efficient. So if we do all the constraint settings for one side, which is, we can just mirror it to the other or symmetrize it. It's simple, it's just like that. So this is for our today's lesson on using constraints. We used 2 constraints actually today. We used the IK constraint, the inverse kinematics, and the copy rotation. Really handy for situations like this. It's extremely handy. And if we use the root bone, it follows along, everything's good, everything's fine, everything's dandy. In our next lesson, we will have a practical example. So this means you will follow along with me, and I will have the files. You can download it, the blend file and everything is ready. What we'll do is to do the bone placements, and from there we're gonna start rigging actual legs. We're gonna do that. And we're gonna use the constraints. We can also check the alignments, and there's gonna be more details as we go through. But for the next lesson, it's gonna be accessibility for it's gonna be accessible for everybody. So the reason behind that is I want us to do this together. It's a follow along tutorial, and also it gives you an idea of what to do and how you can use it for your future projects, and I hope that helps. So thank you guys for watching this lesson. I hope to see you in the next one, where we're gonna have a practical example. And if you found this video helpful, please leave a like, a comment down below. If you have any questions or if you have any feedback, please drop it down below. And make sure to share the video and spread the word, and also spread the love. Thank you guys so much.